Welcome back to the Hammersmith DIY channel. My name is Wyatt Groth, and in today's Learn More video I'm going to be going through a range of different wire balustrading options. You can see here in front of us we've got 4 different tools, and I'm going to talk to you about the different types of tools which work with the different types of wire balustrade. Now before I start today's Learn More video, please subscribe to the Hammersmith DIY channel, and also don't forget to click on the bell notification, as it's the best way of keeping up to date with these and other great videos that we produce. So in today's Learn More video, what we're going to be going through is which swaging method suits my wire balustrade best. And there's a little bit involved in this, so it's going to take a bit of time to work through, but if you bear with me, hopefully you'll learn something as we go through. So basically speaking, if you're doing wire balustrade, there's a number of different systems that you could use for wire balustrading. But really what I wanted to get back to is, how do you want to be crimping your fittings that are used for wire balustrade? And basically there are 3 different systems that we use. So very quickly, the 3 different systems are hydraulic swaging. For hydraulic swaging, we have 2 different units here, and I'll get them out of the box very shortly. But we have our Pro unit and what we call our Mini unit. And when we talk about hydraulic swaging, I'll get something I've prepared earlier. This is what we're actually talking about. You get a close-up here. This is hydraulic swaging here. You can see the fittings that we're talking about, and the ends of the fittings have been crimped with the hydraulic swaging, and once again I'll show you how that's done shortly. And this type of fitting that you see here is basically the fitting that you would end up with as an example of hydraulic swaging. So that's one method of swaging. The next method we have is the hand swager. And this particular tool here, once again, I'll get it out of the box shortly, is what we call a hand swager. This particular tool also has a cutter that's built into it, but the best way of me showing you what it looks like is to show you the product in the end. And what we're basically talking about here is this method of swaging, whereby the wire loops around itself, and you have this particular ferrule section here that you crimp using the swager, and that's what creates your wire balustrade. So if you've seen wire balustrading, you probably have seen this sort of stuff out there, and it's probably a bit more of a traditional method of wire balustrading, but still a very effective method. The third and final method is something that is a little bit different. It's not as commonly seen out there, and what we have called it is a hex swager. And the reason we've called it a hex swager, and you'll see with the tool shortly, but the actual, if you do a zoom up in here, the actual jaws create this sort of hexagonal crimp mechanism, hence why we call it a hex swager. And if you have a look here at the actual fitting itself, this is just an example of what this would look like. But the actual key part, the swaging part, and if you do a close-up here, you'll see this part here. And if you look very close, it may be a little bit difficult to see, but you can see the way it's actually been crimped. And so this is called hex swaging. So now you've got a bit of an idea of what the different styles are. Let's show you the tools and explain to you how they work. Right, so the hex swager is this particular method I'm going to show you now. And you would recall I showed you an example of this particular wire with the hex swaging. So we're going to reproduce this little section of wire to give you an idea as to how it is to crimp these fittings. So these are the parts that we're going to need. We've got some 1x19 3.2mm wire here. It will also work with the 7x7, but I feel the 1x19 configuration is the best. And these are the various different fittings that we have for this particular example. I will show little links to these fittings in the description below. There's no point me quoting codes and stuff, but it's going to be a bit confusing. So this is the hex swaging tool. Let's take it out of the box. Pretty simple tool. Comes out like so. And there you have your tool. What you'll see is, if you open this tool here, you'll see that the jaws actually have some markings on them. 6, 10. What you can do is you can twist these jaws around like so to bring up the section that you want to bring up. In this particular instance, what we're actually going to do is we're going to be working on, I'm not sure if it's actually a 6 or a 10, I'm not sure which one it's referring to, but basically you've got a 6 here and a 10 there. It's that one that works in between. That's the one that we're actually going to be using for our crimping purposes. So all we need to do with this particular setup is you slide this over like so. You then slide this over like so. And finally, this particular fitting here, if you can see this fitting in my hand, one end of the fitting has a hole in it, the other end does not. And that just slides over the wire like so. Now I'm not going to crimp that quite yet. What we're going to do, we're going to go to the other end of the fitting here. Same thing again, we're going to slide this particular fitting on first, and this fitting slides over like so, and then this fitting here. And then finally, the same as what was on the other end, we're going to have another one of these little swage terminals, and they just slide over like so. So now we actually need to crimp the fitting on each end, and the way we're going to do that is by using this particular tool. So very simply, if we get a close up here, slide this fitting in like so. Now what I would recommend is the initial crimp do as close as possible to the end of the wire, like you see here. Just pull it down like accordingly. Once it's engaged, add a bit of pressure, remove it, and you'll see the fitting has been crimped. Then what I would recommend is just put it back in again, maybe about halfway along this time, and same thing again, give it a crimp, release it, and now you've got a second crimp section. You could do it a third time if you wanted to, but I would say that is overkill. Now just go down to the other end, and once again, the exact same scenario, pop that in like so, push that down, get a nice close zoom up there. That's nicely crimped. And a second time, like we were showing before. Open back up again, and there we go. Now if we slide these two back into place, screw this back in accordingly. This particular end of the fitting here, the way this actually operates is you put a little spanner on the end of that and you start twisting that in, and that, as you can see as I'm turning this, can you see the way the fitting's slowly starting to poke out the end? That creates the tension you need, and then all this part here is just nothing more than a cover to cover over the screw. But if I pull that together, that's not going anywhere. Nice and tight. So the Hex Swager, one method of doing wire balustrading is via this particular tool. If you have a look on our website hammersmith.com.au and look under wire balustrade systems, you'll see we have a bunch of systems listed, and the Hex Swager is best used for systems number 11 and 12. So I'll provide some links to them in the description below. The hand swager method of crimping wire balustrade is this particular tool here, and if you take a look at the actual wire itself, you can see what we're talking about here. I'll show you on this particular one. The wire loops around and you crimp this particular ferrule. This is the ferrule here, and that's the way this particular wire balustrade works. So this one actually uses what is a 7x7 wire cable, and it's important that you do use the 7x7, or you can even use a 7x19, because the wire needs to loop around. Unfortunately, the 1x19 really is not suited for this method because it's not as flexible. All right, let's show you how this all works. So this is the box that this particular swager comes in. So you just obviously open her up like so. Take it out of the box, remove the plastic, and this is the tool that you're presented with here. So a couple of things to note with this particular tool. You've actually got three different size swagers, a 1.5, a 2.5, and a 3.2. So obviously we're going to be using the 3.2 millimeter. And then also you will see here, if I do a close-up shot there, that's actually a little cutter built into it. So if you were to put the wire in there like so, you would be able to then cut the wire accordingly. I won't do that now. But that's the tool itself. Let's give you a demo as to how this thing actually operates. So let's give you a bit of a demo as to how this thing actually operates. So let's grab a strand of 7x7 wire. You'll see here what I talked about before. It's quite a flexible product there. And what we're going to do, we're going to grab one of our ferrules like so, and if you take a close-up look of this ferrule here, you'll see it's like a little figure 8 section, and the reason for that is quite simple. The wire, as you push it through like so, then when you twist this section like here and loop it back on itself, if you just zoom in here, you'll see it actually goes back in, to the other section like so. So it's deliberately designed in that fashion. Then all you do is grab this little thimble part, and the reason for the thimble is really just to protect the wire. And then basically what you do here is you just pull this section close, pop the thimble back in, and then basically if you draw these parts in together until you can't really pull it anymore, now the thimble's located in place here and it's ready for crimping. So let's get the tool and actually crimp the fitting. So once again, open the tool up like so, pop the fitting in place, and then what I would tend to do here is probably just in the center or maybe towards the end, just ease the tool down. I'll just move my hands out of the way there so you can see. Just ease the tool down until it engages, and then as you push through, you'll see it gets compressed, and when you release it, give you a close-up shot here, you'll see the actual ferrule has been crimped. Now if you thought that looked a little ugly, what you could simply do here is pop it back in place, and instead of doing the one end, just do the other end. Once again, a close-up shot there. We just crimp down on it like so, and there's your ferrule crushed. And believe me, that's going to hold on to the wire, and you're not going to have any issues. And then what you would do, and I won't do it here, you would just do the same scenario at the other end. And if you wanted to, put a bottle screw on this end, and obviously at one end here, so say at this end, you're going to hook this onto a saddle or something like that, which is going to be fixed to your post. You put your bottle screw on this end, and then you loop that onto same thing again, your saddle or coach screw on your post, and that's your section of wire that uses the hand swager. Now on our website hammersmith.com.au, under the wire balustrade systems, you'll be able to find the system that suits this particular tool. It is system 3 and system 4 is the systems that work best for the hand swager. Hydraulic swaging is this particular method of wire balustrading I'd like to show you now. And as we've discussed earlier, what the hydraulic swaging actually means is, if you take a close-up look at this, we're talking about this type of fitting here, where the wire goes into the end of the fitting like so, and then the fitting is crimped, and that is what holds the wire to the fitting itself. So basically there are two different options of tools for this. We have what we call our mini hydraulic swager, and I'll include a link below so you can see this particular fitting here. And then the other one is our pro hydraulic swager, and once again I'll pop a link behind. So let's get these out of the box, and I'll briefly explain to you the difference between the two and give you a demonstration as to how they work. So the hydraulic swager, the pro one, open up like so. This is basically how the product would be presented to you in a plastic wrapper like this. And basically all you need to do is take this out of the wrapper accordingly, and there'll be some dies in here. These dies are marked with 10 on it. Now when we supply it to you, we should be changing these out and putting the dies that are marked with 6 in, because the dies that are marked with 6 are the dies that best suit 3.2mm wire cable. If you were using our 4mm cable with 4mm fittings, then we advise you to use the dies that are marked with 10. These are simple to come out. You literally just pull them like so. Then you grab the fittings that are marked 6, pop that in like so, and like so. And there you go, the other fittings will be in. You may find when you get the tool, they're already in there, because one of the things we normally do is we pop them in there for you. But if not, you can see how easy it is to do. So this here is the Pro Swager. Now, I'll grab a view of the Mini Swager and give you a bit of a difference, an idea of the difference of the different size that the product is. So here we have the Mini Swager. Once again, take it out of the packaging. This particular Mini Swager is a little bit different because it actually comes with the dies that are marked 4. Once again, take them out, and then what you want to put in place are the one with the dies marked 6. Let's just pop them in like so, and there you have the Mini Swager. So let's show you the difference between the two of them size-wise. I'll just move these boxes aside. And these boxes are quite handy. They're really solid plastic, and the beauty of them is that as a tradie, or even if you're just doing regular jobs or as a one-off job, it's a great way of storing your tool, keeps your tool protected. But if you were doing regular work as an installer, once again, it's a fantastic way of keeping your tool safe and secure. So these are the two different tools that we have here. You can see them laying on the table, get a bit of different size. So what's the difference in the tools? Well, it's very simple. The larger tool, the Pro tool, has an 8-ton output. The smaller tool, the Mini, has a 5-ton output. Now, both tools are more than capable of crimping wire balustrade fittings. So what would make you choose between the two tools? Really what we end up saying to people is, if you're a professional or if you're doing this stuff regularly, then we definitely advise going with the Pro tool, because the extra capacity means you're not having to work quite as hard in the crimping process. If though you were just doing a one-off job at home and you were never likely to use this again, my advice would be just go with the Mini tool. Yes, you'll work a little bit harder in the process of doing the crimping, but you're going to save yourself a bit of money, and really a little bit of extra hard work is not going to be all that difficult. So as I said, the Pro really designed for someone who's doing either a big job or someone who is doing regular jobs. The Mini is really designed for one-off jobs. So let's give you a bit of demonstration of how each of these work. The Mini tool, like the Pro, comes with an off and on switch, and really what you end up doing is you just turn that around to on until it goes as far as you can, and then you just start crimping or compressing this handle, and as you'll see here, the dies start being brought into each other, and at some point they'll end up touching, and then when they do, you get some resistance. You just turn this back to off and it releases the dies. So how do you actually crimp the fittings? Well, let's go with it. So I showed you this before. We've got our 3.2mm 1x19 wire, and we've got our fitting. Slide the cable into the end of the fitting like so until it reaches the end, and then what I would tend to recommend you do, engage the tool to the on position, bring the jaws in until such a point that they get close, then slip the wire in place and slip the tool in place, the fitting in place into the jaws. Now just bring them in slightly more, just until they engage, but you don't want to grip too hard at this point in time. And then what I tend to recommend to people is, in terms of the position, towards the end of the fitting. I wouldn't go in the middle, I'd just go towards the end, maybe not right on the end. You can see where we've positioned it there. I think that is probably pretty good for what we're talking about. When you're happy with everything, making sure the wire is fully in place, then you want to engage further. Just give it a good crimp, and you'll feel some really strong resistance. And when you've felt that resistance, you shouldn't really be able to push too much more. It's important here that you don't try and overdo things, because there's actually a seal in here, and if you were Hercules and literally try and push too hard, that may rupture the seal and cause a problem with the unit. Once you get a serious amount of resistance, it's good enough. You just then undo the dial back to off, it releases it, and if you have a look closely here, you will see some little marks on the end of the fitting, and that shows that the wire has been crimped. So that's the Mini tool. Now let me show you the Pro tool and give you a bit of a difference in the idea of how it crimps. We'll put this mini tool to one side now and grab the Pro tool. So the principle is exactly the same. We've got an off and on dial. There's no difference into how the tool actually operates. So what we're going to do is engage the dial to on, bring the handles in together. Then as we get in closer, we're just going to put this wire into the end of the fitting like so. There we go. Bring it in place. And same thing again, if you can see here, we just want it towards the end of the fitting, not right on the end, but just towards the end. Make sure the wire itself is in correct position. And then once we have that, we're just going to, if you just have a look here on the camera, pump this handle until you get, like with the Mini, a bit more resistance. And once you've done that, release the jaws and the fitting's been crimped. Now what's important to show you here is if I grab the two different fittings that we've done, it's probably a little bit difficult to see. You may have to bring a zoom up here. So what you might see here when you take a closer look, the fitting in front, this one I'm touching my finger here, this was the one that was done with the Pro, and this is the one that is done with the Mini. You can see with the Pro fitting, it's actually crimped it just that little bit more, whereas the Mini, it's a little bit on the lesser side. Both will hold fine, but I would say, you can see there with the Pro one, you've just got that extra amount of leverage with the 8-ton capacity to crimp that fitting a little bit more. So you just don't have to work as hard on that one to get the necessary crimp that you need. The hydraulic wire swage method works best with our wire balustrade systems 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10. So if you jump on our website hammersmith.com.au and take a look at the wire balustrade systems and then have a look at those systems, you'll see which one these work with. Once again, I've included a description down below with links. If you like what you're seeing, don't forget to hit the like button, and also please feel free to drop a comment, as I'm more than happy to answer any comments you have. This is White Groth, signing off.